His small body trembled as he reached for the nanny's hand. No words came out, they never did, but his dark eyes said everything. "Help me. Save me." The mansion fell silent. Staff froze mid-step. Every eye turned to watch. But the woman whose hand he'd chosen wasn't just any caregiver. She was the 18th nanny in 8 months. 17 before her had failed and fled. And what happened next would destroy everything they thought they knew about blood, power, and the bonds that can never be broken. It's a gray Monday morning in the financial district, 2019. The Zhao estate rises like a fortress of black marble and tinted glass, a monument to power built on fear and old money. This isn't just any mansion. This is Liang Zhao's domain. Every guard knows to ask no questions. Every servant understands the unspoken rules. You keep your head down. You do your job. And you never, ever, get attached to the boy. Liang Zhao stands in his study overlooking the city, a figure carved from ice and expensive tailoring. At 35, he's built an empire that spans from legitimate real estate to the shadowy underworld that keeps this city running. His dark eyes miss nothing. His silence is a weapon. His word ends careers and lives. And today, like every day for the past 8 months, he's dealing with the one problem his power cannot solve. His son. The staff whispers about the child in hushed, frightened tones. They call him the Silent One. Some say he's cursed. Others say he's broken beyond repair. The boy hasn't spoken since the accident that killed his mother, hasn't smiled, hasn't cried, hasn't shown a flicker of emotion to anyone who's tried to reach him. 17 nannies have tried. All 17 have failed. Some lasted a week. Others barely made it through a single day. One quit after the boy stared at her for 6 hours straight without blinking. Another fled in tears, claiming the child knew things he shouldn't know. The last one called child services, a mistake that ended her career permanently. Liang has exhausted every option. Therapists, specialists, behavioral experts, all left shaking their heads. The diagnosis varies: selective mutism, severe trauma, attachment disorder. But the result is always the same. The boy is shutting down. Not eating. Barely sleeping. The doctors have given their warning. If something doesn't change soon, they'll have no choice but to recommend institutional care. And today, the 18th nanny arrives. Her name is Jennifer Masters. She steps off the bus with everything she owns in a single worn bag. 24 years old, no family, no references that matter. The agency warned her, this household pays triple rate, but nobody lasts. The child is difficult. She needs the money. She's 3 days from eviction. So she says yes to the job no one else wants. As she walks through the mansion's towering entrance, past armed guards and cold marble, she has no idea that this decision will unravel everything. She doesn't know that the child waiting upstairs is the baby she held for 10 minutes 5 years ago before they took him away. She doesn't know that the moment she sees those dark eyes staring at her from across the room, her entire body will know what her mind hasn't yet grasped. She doesn't know that the boy has been waiting for her. And when Kai Zhao, the child who refuses to speak to anyone, who has rejected every person who's tried to help him, walks across that room and reaches for her hand, the carefully constructed lies that built this family will begin to crumble. Because in that single touch, the boy who speaks to no one will say everything. The staff will freeze, stunned. Liang will watch from the doorway, his investigation already begun. And Jennifer will feel her world tilt as recognition floods through her, a physical memory buried so deep she thought she'd never feel it again. This isn't the story of how a nanny saved a broken child. This story is about much more. And when the truth comes out, it won't just destroy Liang's carefully maintained order. It will expose a murder. It will unravel an empire. It will force the most powerful man in the city to choose between the alliance that protects him and the child he failed. Because Liang Zhao is about to learn that some bonds are stronger than law. Some truths are more powerful than money. What happens in this mansion over the next 9 chapters will break you. But it will also show you what happens when love refuses to stay buried. Jennifer stepped off the bus, her fingers white-knuckled around the strap of a worn canvas bag. Ahead, the Zhao estate loomed like a fortress of obsidian, all sharp angles and black marble. The windows, tinted to an impenetrable darkness, resembled empty eye sockets watching her approach. Armed guards flanked the towering gates, their expressions as frozen as the statues in the garden, hands hovering with practiced lethality near their jackets. The agency woman's warning pulsed in Jennifer's mind, 17 nannies in 8 months. Some ran. One was hospitalized. Jennifer's hands shook, but she forced her feet forward. She had 72 hours before the eviction notice on her door became a reality. In this world of shadows and predators, she had no choice but to enter the lion's den. Inside, the mansion swallowed her whole. The air was unnaturally cold, carrying the sterile, heavy scent of a mausoleum. Mrs. Chin, the housekeeper, appeared from the gloom, her eyes darting nervously toward the shadows. "Rules," she hissed, her fingers digging into Jennifer's arm. "Never enter Mr. Zhao's office uninvited. And whatever you do, don't force the boy to respond. That's when things happen." They stopped before heavy double doors. A sharp grunt from within signaled permission. Inside, Liang Zhao sat behind a desk of black lacquered wood. He signed documents with movements so precise they felt violent. A gold signet ring glinted on his hand, and as he reached for a pen, Jennifer caught the glimpse of a dark tattoo snaking up his forearm from beneath a crisp white sleeve. "The boy is in the East Wing," Liang said, his voice as flat as a grave. He finally looked up, his eyes 2 empty pits of ice. "You have 1 week. The last one tried to call child services. That was unwise." "I need the money, sir," Jennifer whispered, her throat tight. Liang's gaze sharpened, a flicker of dark recognition crossing his face. "You look familiar. Have we met?" "No, sir," she lied, her heart hammering against her ribs. Mrs. Chin hurried her away, leading her to the final door. "The boy, he knows things," the older woman whispered. "He'll look right through you." She pushed the door open. The room was vast, filled with untouched toys and a crushing silence. In the corner, a small boy sat facing the wall. As Jennifer stepped inside, he turned slowly. When his eyes met hers, Jennifer's blood turned to ice. Those dark brown eyes, flecked with honey, she knew them. She felt them in her marrow. Kai stood and walked toward her with an eerie, rhythmic purpose. He stopped inches away, staring with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Then, he reached out, his small finger touching the jagged scar on her left wrist. He traced it as if recognizing a landmark he had studied in a dream. Without a word, he took her hand and led her to the window. That night, the mystery deepened into a haunting ache. At 3 a.m., the door creaked. Kai appeared, dragging a small blanket. He climbed into her bed, curling into her chest as if he were a missing piece of her own body finally returned. Jennifer held him, tears blurring her vision. Her arms remembered this weight, her soul recognized this heartbeat. Across the mansion, Liang Zhao stood before a wall of monitors. He watched the infrared footage of Jennifer cradling the boy, his jaw set in a hard line. He picked up the encrypted phone. "I need a full background check on Jennifer Masters," he commanded. "Everything from 6 years ago." He hung up, his eyes fixed on the screen. This woman was a secret, and in the Zhao house, secrets were a death sentence. The next 3 days dissolved into a fever dream of domesticity and dread. Kai moved through the mansion like a small, silent shadow, but he moved with Jennifer. He ate only when she prepared the meals, taking tiny, tentative bites from the spoon she held as if testing for poison. At night, he drifted off to the sound of her humming a lullaby, a melody she didn't remember learning, words that felt etched into her very bone marrow. His small hand remained tucked into hers, a grip so desperate it felt as though he were anchoring himself to the earth. But the silence was far from peaceful. Jennifer began to notice the jagged edges of Kai's trauma. He flinched violently at the sound of a door closing, his honey-brown eyes scanned the voids beneath furniture for threats only he could see. Whenever they neared the west wing, he would freeze, his hand tightening until her fingers went numb, staring into the corridor as if it were the mouth of a grave. What happened to him? Jennifer whispered to Mrs. Chen one morning. The housekeeper's face drained of color. Her hands trembled as she clutched a stack of laundry. His mother, Isabel, she died in a car wreck 8 months ago. The boy was in the back seat. When they found him, he was covered in her blood. He hasn't made a sound since. Her voice dropped to a terrified breath. Some say it wasn't an accident. She was scared, Miss Jennifer. She kept saying someone was coming for him. Mrs. Chen stopped abruptly, her eyes fixing on a figure behind Jennifer. Yelena Volkov stood in the hallway, a sculpture of ice and white silk. Her smile was beautiful and utterly lifeless. The 18 Nanny, she mused, her European accent sharp as a blade. Jennifer Masters. 24. No family. Remarkable that you've made him smile. He's a sweet boy, Jennifer managed, her skin crawling as Yelena leaned in, her perfume cloying and expensive. Is he? I find his stare disturbing. Yelena glided toward Kai's closet and pulled out a box of drawings. They were violent, red-scribbled depictions of a shattered car and a bleeding woman. But in the corner of every page was a blonde woman, smiling as she watched the carnage. The likeness to Yelena was unmistakable. Don't get too attached, Miss Masters. People close to Kai tend to have accidents. That night, Jennifer's world fractured. She found fresh, thumb-sized bruises on Kai's wrist, and when she asked who did it, he pointed a trembling finger at the engagement photo of Liang and Yelena. Then, Kai pulled down his collar. There, on his shoulder, was a birthmark, the exact same shape and placement as the one behind Jennifer's ear. Driven by a frantic, soul-deep recognition, Jennifer waited until the house was silent to slip into Liang's study. She pried open a locked drawer, her breath hitching as she pulled out the adoption papers. St. Catherine's Hospital. Mercy Heart's agency. The room tilted. This was the baby they had stolen from her 5 years ago. This was her son. Looking for something, Miss Masters? Liang stood in the doorway, his silhouette casting a long, predatory shadow across the floor. His eyes dropped to the papers clutched in her shaking hands, cold and knowing. The silence in the study stretched thin and sharp, like a sheet of broken glass. Liang closed the door behind him with a soft click that carried the chilling finality of a gun cocking. He didn't move toward her, nor did he reach for the documents trembling in her hands. He simply stood there, an immovable silhouette in a perfectly tailored suit, his gold signet ring catching the dim lamplight as he watched her with eyes that were utterly empty. The hospital, Jennifer whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of the revelation. St. Catherine's. That's where Kai was born. Yes, Liang replied, his tone devoid of inflection. That's where I gave birth. 5 years and 7 months ago. Jennifer's lungs felt tight, the air in the room turning to lead. I know. The words hit her with the force of a physical blow. Her knees buckled, and she had to grab the edge of the mahogany desk to keep from collapsing. You know? I know you gave up a baby boy at St. Catherine's. I know the adoption was arranged through Mercy Heart's agency. I know my ex-wife adopted him through that agency. He stepped closer, the cold, expensive scent of his cologne enveloping her. What I don't know is whether you came here deliberately. Whether this is blackmail. Kidnapping. Or revenge. I didn't know. Jennifer's hands shook so violently the papers fluttered to the floor. I've been looking for him for 5 years, but the records were sealed. I had no names. I didn't know Kai was mine until... Until when? Until I saw him. Tears began to track down her face, hot and unstoppable. He has my birthmark. My eyes. He came to me like he already knew me. My body recognized him before my mind could even process the truth. Liang studied her, his face a mask of stone. Then, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. He had been waiting for this moment. I had you investigated 3 days ago. The moment I saw how my son responded to you. He opened it, revealing her own history laid bare, hospital records, birth certificates, the predatory paperwork of the agency. I received this an hour before you broke into my study. So you already knew, she breathed. I suspected. The report confirmed it. He sat on the edge of the desk, and for a fleeting second, the ice in his expression cracked. Jennifer Masters. 18 years old. Pregnant through rape by a foster supervisor. Told by the agency you had no rights. They lied to you, Jennifer. They stole my son from you, and Isabel participated in that theft. Then what happens now? She asked, a spark of hope igniting. His jaw tightened. Nothing. Kai is legally my son. If you try to claim him, the legal battle will destroy what's left of his mind. He is finally eating and sleeping because of you. If you love him, you will stay, you will care for him, and you will never tell a soul who you are. You want me to pretend I'm not his mother? I'm telling you that the truth will rip him away from his only stability. And if Yelena finds out, she will remove you, or worse. She's hurting him. Jennifer cried. I found bruises. I know, Liang's voice turned lethal. I'm handling it. But I need time to break the alliance with her family without a war breaking out. Give me time. How much time does Kai have? The question hung in the air like smoke. Suddenly, Liang's phone buzzed. His face went pale. She's coming. Yelena knows you're here. He grabbed Jennifer's arm, his grip like iron. Deny everything. Play the frightened nanny. She killed Isabel, Jennifer. I know it, but I can't prove it yet. If she thinks you're a threat, you're next. He shoved the records into a hidden safe just as the door handle began to jiggle violently. Liang! Open this door. Yelena's voice shrieked. He pulled Jennifer close, his breath hot against her ear. Stay quiet. He swung the door open. Yelena stood there, beautiful and lethal, flanked by 2 guards. Why was the door locked? She demanded, her eyes darting to Jennifer with murderous intent. Private conversation, Liang says, his voice as calm as still water. Yelena's eyes land on Jennifer like a predator sizing up wounded prey. What kind of private conversation requires a nanny? The kind where I discuss my son's medical information. Really? Yelena glides into the room, circling Jennifer with predatory grace. Then explain why your guards saw her raiding your filing cabinets 30 minutes ago. The air in the study turns to ice. Yelena pulls out her phone, flicking it to show security footage, Jennifer's hands in the drawer, clear as day. I was looking for Kai's medical records, Jennifer says quickly. He had a nightmare about needles. I wanted to see his history. Liar, Yelena spits, her smile razor sharp. You were looking at adoption papers. I gave her permission, Liang interrupts. Yelena's smile falters. I asked her to review his history to understand his trauma. Is there a reason you're monitoring my private study? I'm monitoring her, Yelena's voice drops to a dangerous silk. She looks at him like he's hers. The next 72 hours are a slow death. Yelena is everywhere. She sits at breakfast with cold calculation, she volunteers for bedtime, and Jennifer hears muffled crying through the walls. When she rushes in, she finds Yelena's fingers wrapped around Kai's arm like a vice. He was having a tantrum, Yelena purrs. Kai's eyes are wide with terror. On the 3rd day, Jennifer is summoned. A diamond bracelet sits on Liang's desk, a trap sprung. It was under your mattress, Yelena says. I didn't take it. Jennifer turns to Liang. You know what she's doing. Liang's eyes flicker, then die. You're fired, Miss Masters. 1 hour to pack. You coward. Jennifer's control shatters as guards grab her. Kai is my son. I gave birth to him. Isabel stole him. Yelena's face goes white, then crimson. What did you say? She's unstable, Liang says quickly. Remove her. As the car pulls away, Kai presses his hands to the glass in the east wing. His mouth opens, and for the first time in 8 months, a sound breaks through, Mama. But no one hears. 5 days later, Jennifer stands in Liang's office once more. She throws an envelope on the desk. DNA results. 99.9% match. I'm not leaving without my son. Before Liang can speak, Yelena bursts in, her face twisted with rage. What is SHE doing here? Jennifer turns, her voice steady and lethal. I'm here to talk about how you killed Isabel Moretti. About how you've been abusing Kai. And about how you're about to lose everything. Yelena's mask finally shatters, revealing the monster beneath. The real war has begun. The room fell into a silence so absolute it felt like the air had been sucked out of it. Yelena's face cycled through a jagged kaleidoscope of emotions, shock, blinding rage, then a flicker of cold, calculating fear. Suddenly, she laughed. It was a high-pitched, unnatural sound that grated against the marble walls. You're insane, Yelena spat. Liang, she's completely insane. She breaks into your home and throws around wild accusations because she's obsessed. The brake lines on Isabel's car were cut, Jennifer said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of a gavel. I pulled the accident report. The police called it tampering but couldn't prove intent because no one had a motive. Except you did. Isabel was leaving Liang. She was taking Kai and disappearing. She told her lawyer 2 weeks before she died. Yelena's smile froze, her features turning into a waxen mask. Liang's voice was deadly calm. How do you know about the lawyer? Because I went to him. I told him I was Kai's biological mother. Jennifer threw a folder onto the desk. Isabel found records showing the agency coerced me. She was going to contact me, to give Kai back to his real mother. That's a lie. Yelena's voice cracked. Then explain this. Jennifer threw down Isabel's journal. Her lawyer kept it as insurance. She wrote about your threats, Yelena. How you said if she ruined the family alliance, she'd never see Kai again. Liang's face went white as he read the jagged handwriting. Yelena backed toward the door. Those are forgeries. I've had you investigated for 3 months, Yelena, Liang interrupted, his voice hollow. He opened his drawer and pulled out a file of his own. A credit card purchase for brake fluid 3 days before the accident. Security footage of you at the shop. Witness testimony from Isabel's neighbor who saw you near her car. He hit play on a recording on his phone. Isabel's terrified voice filled the room, begging Liang to protect Kai from Yelena. You killed her, Liang whispered. You murdered the mother of my child for a merger. It was an accident. Yelena shrieked, her composure finally exploding. She was weak. She was going to hand the Zhao heir to this whore. She pointed a trembling finger at Jennifer. The slap echoed like a gunshot. Liang's hand struck Yelena's face with the force of years of suppressed fury. Get out of my house. You hit me, she gasped. You've confessed in front of witnesses, Yelena. The guards have been recording everything. As the guard seized her, Yelena lunged at Jennifer, screaming about legal rights and bloodlines until the door slammed shut on her madness. Where is he? Jennifer turned to Liang, her heart hammering. Where is Kai? Liang's expression fractured. He's gone. The window was open. He's been missing for 6 hours because I was a coward who chose politics over his safety. He'll look for me, Jennifer whispered. He knows where I am. They raced to the city, Jennifer's instinct screaming. As the sun set, she saw a small, shivering figure on the steps of the church near the hospital. Kai? The boy turned, his honey-brown eyes lighting up as he sprinted toward her. He crashed into her arms, sobbing and clinging to her with a grip that would never let go. Liang stood back, watching the wreckage of his life finally start to mend. He realized then that real power wasn't fear or empires, it was the love that had guided a silent boy across a cold city to find the only heart that beat like his own. The sirens of the ambulance were a distant, screaming echo of the chaos left behind at the Zhao estate, but Kai's grip on Jennifer was the only reality that mattered. Even when the paramedics arrived at the shelter steps, their faces taut with professional concern, Kai let out a raw, guttural scream the moment they tried to pull him away. "He needs an exam," the paramedic insisted, voice raised over the boy's distress. "He's dehydrated, hypothermic, and his feet are bleeding." "I'll carry him," Jennifer said, her voice like iron. She wouldn't let him go. Not again. They rushed to St. Catherine's Hospital emergency room, the very place where Jennifer's world had been shattered 5 years ago. In the sterile, white light of the examination room, Kai finally loosened his hold, though he kept one small hand locked around Jennifer's finger like a lifeline. The doctor's brow furrowed as he read the boy's vitals. Severe dehydration, lacerations, malnutrition. How long has this child been neglected? Months, Liang said from the doorway, his silhouette casting a long, somber shadow. "And you are?" the doctor asked, eyes hardening. "His father." "Legally," Liang replied. Jennifer didn't hesitate. "I'm his biological mother. I have DNA proof. He was taken from me through coercion." The room grew thick with tension as the doctor spoke of calling Child Protective Services. Jennifer's heart hammered against her ribs, the thought of Kai being sucked back into the system was unbearable. "Please," she whispered. "He just found me. If you take him now, he'll break." "I'll give you 24 hours, the doctor finally conceded. "Get an emergency custody order. Prove he's safe with you, or my hands are tied." Liang moved with the lethal efficiency of a man who had spent his life commanding empires. He was on his phone immediately, summoning lawyers and judges into the night. Across the room, Jennifer sat with Kai, who refused to eat for the nurses. Only when Jennifer picked up the spoon did he open his mouth, taking slow, small bites. "He knows his mother," a nurse whispered, moved by the sight. Liang's lawyer finally called with a grim warning. The judge might award custody to neither of them, foster care was a real possibility. Liang looked at Kai, seeing the peace on the boy's face for the first time in his life. "I'm not fighting her," Liang told his lawyer. "Prep the paperwork. I'm voluntarily terminating my parental rights and supporting Jennifer's petition." When he told Jennifer, she stared at him in shock. "You'll lose everything. The alliance, your standing." "I already lost everything," Liang said, kneeling beside the hospital bed. "I'm just trying to get something back." An hour later, in a quiet, midnight courtroom, Liang stood before Judge Morrison and surrendered his claim. "He's not my son, Your Honor. The adoption was a fraud. I'm simply correcting an injustice." The judge looked at the homeless woman and the syndicate king. "I'm granting temporary emergency custody to Miss Masters," the judge declared. "Conditioned on the housing and support Mr. Zhao has offered." Jennifer collapsed into sobs. Back at the hospital, she climbed into the bed with Kai, holding him as they both finally drifted into a sleep without nightmares. "Thank you," she whispered to Liang as he stood in the doorway. "We'll learn how to be what he needs," Liang promised. And for the first time, the man of ice smiled, a real, human smile. They were no longer a boss and a nanny, or a king and a commoner. They were just two people trying to mend a broken boy. The apartment Liang provided was a sanctuary of warm wood and sunlight, a sharp contrast to the black marble tomb of the Zhao estate. Here, the air was soft, filled with the scent of pine and lavender rather than sterile intimidation. Jennifer and Kai moved in together, beginning the slow, painful process of weaving their lives back into a single thread. The first few nights were an exercise in terror and healing. Kai screamed if Jennifer moved an inch from his side, so she dragged his mattress into her room. By the third night, he had climbed into her bed, his small hand locked in hers as if tethered to the only solid thing in his world. "Is this wrong?" Jennifer asked Dr. Chin during a daily session. letting him be so dependent? He is re-establishing a secure attachment that was violently severed, Dr. Chen explained, watching Kai play with blocks. He'll separate when he's ready. For now, he just needs to know you won't disappear. Days began to follow a healing rhythm. Kai followed Jennifer from room to room, his vocabulary limited to mama, stay, and no, but his cheeks were finally regaining their color. They read together, drew together, and cooked simple meals, small, normal acts that had been stolen from them 5 years ago. Liang visited once a week under Dr. Chen's supervision. Initially, Kai hid behind Jennifer's legs, but eventually, curiosity won out. One afternoon, Liang brought a wooden puzzle. They sat on the floor, working in a silence that was no longer heavy, but expectant. He's starting to trust you, Dr. Chen observed quietly. I don't deserve it, Liang admitted, his eyes fixed on the boy. Maybe not. But he's offering it anyway. Don't waste it. However, the peace was fragile. 2 weeks into their new life, a legal notice arrived from the Volkov family. They were challenging the adoption dissolution, claiming Liang had manipulated the courts. Jennifer's hands shook as she read the letter. They're trying to take him back. Liang arrived within the hour, a cold fire in his eyes. They won't win. Yelena is in prison, they have no grounds. But they have power, Liang. And money. So do I, he said, but his voice carried a dark weight. Later that night, Jennifer overheard him on the phone, his voice a low, lethal growl. I want every bribe, every illegal contract they've ever signed. They're coming after my son, and I'm going to destroy them. Jennifer stepped into the kitchen. Your son? Liang froze, looking caught. I meant. You meant it, she said softly, sitting across from him. What happens when the battles end, Liang? Do you walk away? I want to be his father, Liang confessed, his voice cracking. I want to protect him. But I don't have the right to want that. Rights are for courts, Jennifer replied. Family is something you build. If you're willing to do the work, starting from zero, then maybe one day he'll call you dad. That night, after a lingering nightmare, Kai looked at Jennifer with his honey-brown eyes. Mama, why did you leave me? The question shattered her. She pulled him close, her tears falling into his curls. Bad people lied to me, baby. They said I couldn't keep you. But I looked for you every single day for 5 years. I never stopped. I knew you, Kai whispered, leaning into her. In my dreams, you were always singing and looking for me. I'm glad you found me, Mama. Me too, baby, Jennifer breathed, rocking him as he finally fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. 6 weeks later, the silence of the courtroom felt like the heavy, suffocating air before a lightning strike. The gallery was a sea of flashing bulbs and whispering reporters, but Jennifer saw only the woman behind the defense table. Yelena Volkov sat as a sculpture of defiance, her eyes cold as flint, tracking Jennifer as she climbed the stairs to the witness stand. Miss Masters, the prosecutor began, his voice steady. Can you describe the injuries you observed on Kai Zhao? Jennifer took a breath, her voice gaining strength with every word. She detailed the purple thumbprints on his wrists and the flinching terror that had become his only language. I saw her grab him like he was an object, not a child. I saw the light go out of his eyes whenever her heels clicked in the hallway. Yelena's lawyer leapt up. Hearsay. The child cannot corroborate. Actually, the prosecutor interrupted, we have video evidence. The courtroom went dark. On the monitors, grainy footage from Liang's hidden cameras flickered to life. The gallery gasped. There was Yelena, dragging Kai by one arm while he remained eerily, heartbreakingly silent. There was the slap across his face for failing to smile for guests, and the sight of a 5-year-old being locked into a dark closet for hours. Even the judge looked physically ill, his mouth set in a grim, tight line. Liang testified next, his presence commanding and lethal. He spoke of the brake fluid, the voicemail from a terrified Isabel, and the confession he had lured out of Yelena. When the defense suggested he had coerced the confession to break an engagement, Liang's eyes turned to pits of ice. The confession was merely confirmation, he stated. I broke the engagement because she was a murderer and a monster. The final blow came from a surprise witness, Ms. Patterson, the former director of the Mercy Hearts Agency. Under the heat of the prosecutor's glare, the woman's composure crumbled. She admitted to expediting Jennifer's paperwork, denying her legal counsel, and effectively selling the baby because Isabel Moretti had offered a substantial donation. So you trafficked a baby, the prosecutor summarized. The courtroom erupted in gasps. The judge didn't need to hear more. He banged his gavel, the sound echoing like a death knell for Yelena's freedom. Jennifer Masters is hereby awarded full, permanent custody. The adoption is dissolved. Ms. Volkov, he said, looking at the blonde woman with pure disdain, you will never see that child again. Yelena's screams of he's mine were cut short as bailiffs dragged her from the room. 2 days later, the verdict was finalized, guilty on all counts. 25 years to life. As the Volkov empire collapsed under the weight of the subsequent investigations, Liang stood firm. He had chosen justice over power, and in doing so, he had secured a different kind of empire, one built on the protection of the only two people who mattered. Kai was safe. Jennifer was his mother. And the war was finally won. 6 months had passed, and the sharp, cold edges of the past had finally begun to soften. Jennifer and Kai lived in a small house now, not the apartment Liang had provided, but a place they had chosen together. It had warm wood floors, 3 bedrooms, and a backyard dominated by a swing set that creaked rhythmically in the breeze. It was normal. It was safe. It was theirs. Kai was in kindergarten now. The silent shadow who had once communicated through flinches and stares was gone, replaced by a boy who spoke in full, excited sentences. He still had nightmares occasionally, still guarded his heart against sudden movements, but as Dr. Chin noted during her monthly visit, his progress was remarkable. The secure attachment you've built, she said, watching Kai chase a butterfly through the grass, has given him a foundation he never had. Liang visited every Sunday. What started as supervised meetings had evolved into a quiet, domestic ritual. He would arrive with breakfast, and the 3 of them would sit together at the small kitchen table. He taught Kai how to throw a baseball and how to tie his shoes with the patience of a man who had discovered a world far more rewarding than the one he had previously ruled. One Sunday, as they sat on the porch, Kai looked up from his coloring book. Liang, why don't you live here? The air stilled. Liang looked at Jennifer, then back to the boy. Because this is your home, Kai. With your mama. But you're here all the time, Kai observed with the devastating logic of a 6-year-old. You fix things and make mama laugh. Are you going to get married? Liang nearly choked on his coffee. Jennifer felt her face heat up. No, baby, she said gently. We're friends. We work together to take care of you, but that's not how we love each other. Grown-ups always say it's complicated when they don't know the answer, Kai countered, returning to his drawing. Later, after Kai had drifted into a nap, Liang and Jennifer sat in the silence of the porch. He's not wrong, Liang said quietly. I don't know what to call us. We're co-parents, Jennifer replied. Is that all? Liang looked at her, his eyes no longer empty pits but full of a vulnerable, human light. I've changed, Jennifer. I'm not the man who threw you out anymore. I know, she said, reaching out to touch his hand. You're the man I trust with my son. That's everything. 3 months later, on Kai's 6th birthday, the world felt whole. After a backyard party filled with laughter, Kai sat between them on the porch swing. He looked at Liang, his expression serious. Liang? Can I call you Dad? The silence was deafening. Liang knelt before the boy, his voice thick. Are you sure? You don't have to. I want to, Kai insisted. You do dad things. You protect us. You're the kind of dad who stays. Liang pulled the boy into a fierce hug, tears streaming down his face. Yeah, buddy. You can call me Dad. 1 year later, the nightmares were rare. Kai thrived in school, his drawings now featuring 3 people under a rainbow, Mama, Kai, and Dad. Sometimes he added a 4th, Isabel, the first mama they still visited and remembered together. Liang never moved in, but he was there every day, helping with dinner and homework. He had traded an empire of fear for a kingdom of 3. As Jennifer watched them from the kitchen window, the man who had learned to kneel and the boy who had found his voice, she realized they were exactly what they needed to be. A family rebuilt from broken pieces. Imperfect. Unconventional. Unbreakable. The end.